If I showed you this skate park, would you tell me it's a bad skate park or a good skate park? Well, I recently got roasted on Instagram for calling this a bad skate park, but my video had a little bit of humor to it, so it wasn't all the way serious. But let's talk about this and dive into why I got 94,000 views and 918 comments where I got roasted. This could be one of the worst skate parks I've seen. Check this out. There's a curved metal edge, which is not great. Giant metal hip and a big long round rail, which is not fun. A super narrow half pipe. Really random flyout box to nowhere. Mini version of the hip, except for the metal's kind of breaking down here. And then a square rail. This might be their best thing. This is the whole park. I give it a 2 out of 10. Now, before I get into if I'm serious or not on this, I should show you some of the comments here. Curve ledge rips. Quit bitching. Is this sarcasm? I can't tell. Park seems fine. Looks like a blast. 2 wedge hips. That rail looks fun. You can just tell you don't know better. Go back to pushing around the tennis court. While you see this video and you can give it that criticism, it is fair, right? But I was halfway serious, halfway not. I do personally think that this skate park is kind of at the bottom of the skate park chain, if you will, in contrast to a lot of the other skate parks we're getting in the suburbs. And a lot of the criticism I got for this video revolved around people that aren't even from America. A lot of people are from UK and have mentioned that the UK doesn't have skate parks oftentimes and just like gravel roads. So I get it, right? We're privileged with skate parks. And I want to talk about what makes a good skate park versus what makes an actual bad skate park. And I'll give you kind of my like realistic actual rating of it as I get towards the end of this, because when I said 2 out of 10, that was just kind of in contrast to what I've been to, but I have a more realistic rating in the actual grand scheme of things. This person said, I'd argue there's no bad park, only inability to be creative with what's given. So look at those Ugandan skiers making the most of a simple park. And I like that comment. That is a good point. While I could make the argument here that I am not being creative enough, I am actually pretty creative when it comes to finding a bad park. I've been to parks where you can barely even just go up the ramp because it's so rusted out and just terrible. And it's fun to like even just find one little small thing to turn it into another obstacle and skate it. Or even if you're just hitting the flat ground there and once in a while using the quarter pipe that is like the only thing there to do an axle stall or do like learn maybe a back kickflip, back disaster, whatever it might be. That's always fun. So I am actually really on board with that idea. Down here, you can see someone says, this is sarcasm, right? This is better than 90% of the parks I grew up with. Let's kind of dive into my realistic thoughts on this actual skate park here. So I think to do that, we should look at my TikTok one more time. This could be one of the worst skate parks I've seen. Check this out. There's a curved metal ledge. For this ledge, I have mixed thoughts on it. Number one, a curved ledge at a skate park, as long as it's like a decent height, can actually be pretty fun. I grew up going to Schaumburg Skate Plaza, which has a curved ledge right when you walk in, so I kind of grew up skating one. But the difference here is you can tell there's not really like a top piece on this coping. It's just like that side angle iron, which makes it weird, and it's not that big of a curve on this ledge. This ledge is just a little taller than like an average size ledge, which makes it a little bit harder for not someone like me, but makes it harder for someone who's a beginner. I think every skate park should have a nice ledge that even a beginner could maybe, you know, after a week or two of skating, suddenly be like, yeah, maybe I could hit that ledge, right? I think it makes it more daunting when there's a curved ledge. But if you're an intermediate or advanced skater, it is a fun thing to try to challenge yourself and get more creative with it. I just think as someone who wants a straight-on ledge, this does make it a lot more daunting. Now, there was a puddle the day I went there. I'm not talking about it's bad because of the puddle. Like, obviously, that's going to go away, right? It is a nice and long ledge. I just don't like that there's no top coping either. And while I did mention that, you know, even though I just said the height isn't great, the height is good if you are intermediate or if you are an expert, but they also had a straight out ledge on top of it, which is like an even bigger ollie. And on the opposite side, you had to hit it from flat to that taller part, which if you are an advanced skater, you've been skating for a while, hell yeah, that's a lot of fun. You know what I mean? You can definitely like make use of it. My whole point here is I just think that skate parks in general should have just one, like, at least regular size straight out ledge for people to practice on. Like, that's it. It's not that hard to ask for. Now let's continue. Which is not great. Giant metal hip. They have this giant hip here, which when I was going up it, at least, I noticed that unless you're really cooking it, like really going full blast, you lose speed in your time of going up it before you actually like hit the pop on it, which is kind of a bummer. And that's just, you know, my own skating. I'm not by any means a super beginner. I am an intermediate skater, and I've definitely skated hips before. There's clips of me skating Glen Ellen Skatepark's hip. This one even bigger than that, and I just don't like that this whole middle section, it's like the area that's flat up top is narrow because of this giant hip section. I find that to be really odd, and I'm not a big fan of metal hips because of like the flashing, and which means like the very bottom of it where you roll off of it. That part can get uneven, and also the surface isn't that great on this, so that's why I wasn't too fond of this. I think if you're maybe pretty advanced or a little bit more than intermediate, this is probably a pretty good hip. And I'm not saying you can't make use of it. You definitely can make use of it, because I mean, look at it. It's without a doubt you can make use of it. There's no question there. But let's go on to the next part. And a big long round rail, which is not. Now this is a giant down rail, and people were roasting me. Someone said the ledge and the rail are good. Now, yes, this rail actually, in all essence, is good. I agree with the people that are saying it's good for skating. If you have the right speed and you're cooking it, then you can definitely hit this down rail. It was a little bit taller than you'd think. This exact moment doesn't do justice for how big this rail is, but it is kind of daunting. Again, I grew up going to skate parks where they would have like two different sizes of rails. You'd have like a really big one, then you'd have like one that you could get better and hit after a while. Now, you can do that with this one. The fact that it's round, I think, makes it a little bit more daunting than if it were a flat rail. A good example of this would be something like at Woodridge Skate Park. They have a wider flat rail that's not as tall as this. I think that's a good rail for skate parks to have, especially for people that would like eventually want to skate a rail. I've been skating for like 12 years, and this rail is daunting to me. And you don't have that much room on the opposite side. So if your stance is opposite, then you're kind of screwed. I mean, you're not, but you are at the same time because it's narrow over there. So that part I didn't really like about it. I could see locking pegs from a bike into this being, you know, pretty nice. Because you can see right here, I wrote, feels like it's for bikes. A super Okay, I wrote really narrow metal half pipe here. I think people were kind of tripping out over my wording here, saying that this is just considered to be called a mini. But let's look at it. Narrow half pipe. Now you can see right here, this is super narrow. Now, while you can have fun, the coping of this is pretty flush with the top of the metal up there, which did make it a little bit harder to lock in. And I don't get why this was so narrow. They had more room. They could have made this wider. Like, this is definitely like a one person at a time kind of thing. Now, yeah, there is only supposed to be one person at a time, obviously. But I think you can also argue that most skate parks you go to now, you could easily have like 2 or 3 people going in a half pipe at once. At least the ones that are out by me that are even like new. You could have, if you really wanted to, a couple of people could be in them. Not that you would. Do you know what I'm trying to say? This one, even if you're like trying to slide across, it's narrow and it makes it challenging. And I think that's good. And I think this is like a decent height mini. I don't think it's like a bad height or anything like that. I think if you're going to go skate other half pipes, this probably is, you know, going to make you pretty good eventually because you're so challenged with how narrow it is. You got to come up with ways that, you know, you're not going to die and eat shit on this thing. That is my criticism for this. Although one thing I'll say is these metal half pipes get insanely slippery. after a while. And that's the one thing that if it heats up or there's wax that melts on it, or, you know, it just kind of dried up from the rain, like, this thing's going to be slippery, so I'm not too fond of metal half pipes, or I guess you'd say mini here if that's what people are calling it. But I'm getting a lot of accusations for being bad at skating, but let's continue. Really random flyout box. Now, I said random flyout box, and people got mad. Now, I know this guy. This Peter guy's really cool, but I see he said not a flyout box nowhere. It's a launch ramp. Now, to that I say, yeah, he's right. It is a launch ramp, but the area you had to get speed for it was not a lot of speed. Like, you literally had maybe 10 or 12 board lengths of space before this. And it is fun if you're a beginner. I could see beginners just shooting off of this and having fun. So I do appreciate that about it. But it just felt like on the side and it felt random. I don't know. I've seen better ones where it's like in the middle of a line so you can go off of it, then wrap around the park. Like for instance, Glendale Heights Skate Park. They have one that is like in line with other obstacles, so then you go off it and you can wrap around the park. That's a lot of fun to me. This one that's just boom. It's like, huh? Box to nowhere. There was nothing ahead of it. Now, moving on to the mini hip section over here. I think it's nice that they've kind of created this area for beginners and made this a little bit of a smaller section in contrast to the other one. This one even will go as far as not having a rail. But you can see the angle iron lifting, and I will forever have an issue, and I know this is a privilege, because in Illinois we are getting so many new skate parks built, a lot of new concrete ones. We're getting even some new metal ones, and I'm so against metal parks because metal starts to lift after a while, and imagine if you fell and clipped your hand on that. You'd get cut up. One of my followers has already sent me a message from being cut up from the Glen Ellen skate park from this very thing happening at the new park. And if you're defending this, then I don't know what's happening here. Like, I would rather be skating flat ground at this point than have jagged metal edges because, dude, it's all it takes. One fall, one clip, and imagine like your finger getting stuck under that. Anything. Now, the height of this hip is pretty good. Look at this. Mini version of the hip, except for the metal's kind of breaking down here. The metal's starting to split apart right here. Now, if you look at this, you can see that the arc of this hip is not that tall, and it's good for beginners because they can kind of hit the lower side of it and then land in still a good spot and not go from like low to high real quickly. So this is actually a pretty good hip, and you can also go from the ramp to, you know, the part where it meets up, where it goes down, and do like a tail slide across. I think this one, because there's no rail there, you feel more comfortable with using that part of it, and that much I like about it. I think there's like more creativity to be had in that respect. Now, people could argue against that, and if you do, let me know. I'm curious to hear what your take on it is. You can see right here in the comments, there's still people being, looks pretty fun, nicer than my local. Do you skate or just review parks? Yes, I skate. Now, someone here said, this is why Midwest skaters are so gnarly. And to that, I say, yeah, because we did grow up with, like, a lot of bad parks before a lot of these new ones started coming into the area. Man, that park looks so fun. Quit complaining. It's not that bad. I've seen way worse. And then a square rail. This might be the... I did call out this square rail as being the best thing there. And the reason I said that is because it's actually kind of a normal rail, but it's really short. That's the one kicker to it. I would skate this, but be bored after a while because of like how short it is. But if you're trying to learn like a new rail trick, maybe you're trying to get used to like kickflip from boards or trying to hit like a tray flip board or whatever it might be, like flip in. Or maybe you just want to learn like a feeble or learn a Smith or whatever it might be. This is a good opportunity to do that, but it's kind of like setting your expectations low for what like other rails are like, or even like a street rail, which I don't like that about it. But I will say this, I think skate parks should have at least like one good square rail for people to practice on, like a normal height one. Again, something similar to what Wheaton Skate Park has, like they kept it from the old one. I think that was a clutch move for them to keep that. But this one's just like a little bit short. But I did like how well this rail slides. So If I was going to skate this park again, I would spend a little bit more time here trying to learn kickflip front board or something on this rail so I could get better. But I want to quickly address my rating here. Their best thing. This is the whole park. I give it a 2 out of 10. The ground at this skate park was kind of eh. I could see me falling at certain parts of it and getting ripped up, and that I don't like about it. Main reason why I said 2 out of 10 here is kind of just jokes. I wasn't all that serious. If I'm being completely serious with you, I think this is like 5 out of 10 in contrast to everything else. 5 because it's not the worst ever, but it's also not the best ever. It's kind of in between. In some cases, I'd rather skate flat ground than this park. But in other cases, if this was all I had, I'd be here every single day. You can even see a comment right here where someone said, "Stop crying, brother. You live in a country with good parks and access to good brands to skate. There are places where there are kids. The police chase them for skating the street because they don't have places. So if you can or don't know how to use those ramps, have dignity and delete the video." So I'll say this. In the Midwest, we are very fortunate to have the skate parks we have, especially with the fact they keep coming around and building more and more and more. And I will continue to talk about how fortunate we are, because a lot of people are unfortunate where they live and literally only have gravel, and the nearest park to them is hours and hours away, and some of these people are too young and can't even, let alone drive themselves, or maybe they don't even have a car and they can't get to the skate park. It's not in walking distance, so the most they have would be flat ground, or some people honestly don't even have a board. So I'm very thankful for the parks that we do have. I think when you live in an area like I do, where you're so surrounded by good parks, it's easy to look at a park like the one I went to here and be like, oh, this is bad compared to it. Because, yeah, I'm warmed up to all the really good parks. I mean, I even have Grant Park in Chicago, which is a huge skate park. And I think everyone's kind of entitled to their own opinion of skate parks. Because for me, I like a good mix of street and transition all at one park. And it's a plus if it even flows all together somehow, which I've seen. I think someone sent me a park at Texas that's like that. I've also been to parks out here in Illinois that are like that. Like, I enjoy the Evanston skate park. I think that new one kind of does a good job of bringing those two things together. But oftentimes you go to parks where some parks are just transition, like Northbrook Skate Park, for example, and there's not really much options for street there. And you know, someone could look at that park and say, that's the best park, and that, you know, the new park in Evanston is the worst park ever. You know, everyone has their own opinions, and I think it's totally okay to have your own opinions on it. I'm just here to share my opinion on this skate park, Willard Skate Park in Elgin, that I got ripped up for. But yeah, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, me talking about skate parks, leave a comment down below. Let me know. This was a fun video for me to make. And I hope I'm not yapping too much. I just enjoy talking about skate parks and going to them. So I'm curious what you guys think. So leave a comment down below. Hit that subscribe button if you want more skate park content, because I will bring that your way if that's something you're interested in. So without further ado, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.